After the official announcement, audiences across the country were looking forward to us sprinkling sugar. I'm the assistant to the president. I accidentally saw the president's pink and tender diary, and I couldn't help laughing out loud. There are many kinds of men, and today I am infatuated. Before the New Year's Day holiday, 2 female employees went to eat Japanese food together, and I couldn't understand why the hook was hanged. A deep male voice came from behind him. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my assistant peeked at my diary, and he didn't have any quality. 1. President, here's a document for you to sign. There was no response for half a day. I thought that the president said that he wanted to treat the company as his home. Do you come into your house and knock on the door? No. So I pushed the door in and glanced around. The eyes are wide and bright floor-to-ceiling windows, which overlook the entire city at a glance, and the view is beautiful. The interior furnishings are elegantly placed, the business clean atmosphere is blowing in the face, and the air is faintly wafting with the unique fragrance of the boss. The office supplies on the table are complete, but a person who is short of an office. Presidents. No one responded, but a pink notebook on the table caught my eye. This is diary. Serious people who keep a diary. Do I write? I don't write. As a conscientious assistant, I'm going to help the president close the diary. There are many kinds of men, and today I am infatuated. Oops, OMG. I accidentally saw it. Peeking at other people's diaries is a very low quality behavior, but fortunately, I am not of high quality. Recently, I don't like to talk more and more, and I plan to sign up for a sign language class. I think the fortune teller told me that I would be trapped by love. I always thought it was love, but I didn't expect it to be the epidemic. Then look down. 12.20. Today I overheard Wallace Fish saying that my mouth stinks. It's strange that the nose can't do it at a young age. Garbage president. My last name is Harrison. Before the New Year's Day holiday, 2 female employees went to eat Japanese food together, and I couldn't understand why the hook was hanged. I was looking at it happily, and a deep male voice came from behind me. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my assistant peeked at my diary, and he didn't have any quality. A deep, clear voice, full of biting chills. I turned stiffly, my tongue stiff. Total. Cut out. I don't know, who is so immoral that they actually opened your diary. The more I spoke, the more justified I became, and the more indignant my tone became. It's as if the person who opened the notebook appeared at this moment, and I could fight with him. It's really low quality, and there is no morality at all. I looked away from his face and involuntarily lowered my eyes. When I looked down, the open diary was still in my hand. I was stunned. Quickly threw away the diary in his hand. It smashed on the president's forehead at once. Philip Crichton looked at me coldly as he rubbed his flushed forehead. The book is an inferior product that I don't know where the president got it from. Scattered like snowflakes when hit by gravity. Page by page floated on the ground. I watched the paper fly on the ground, and my mind kept imagining the miserable life of being fired. I stiffened a smile. President, the quality of this notebook doesn't seem to be very good. A sneer came from his ear. Huh. My legs went limp. President, I didn't see you being infatuated. As soon as the words ended, I suddenly realized something. Finished. Don't admit yourself. His face was unfazed, and his dark eyes stared straight at me. What do you see? As his words fell, he moved a little closer to me. It was as if he would kill me on the spot if I said the wrong thing. The fear of force makes my thighs tremble. I crouched down, trying to pick up my notebook, and make amends for him. Unexpectedly, just half squatting, Philip Crichton hurriedly called a halt. I stopped in mid-air and looked at him in bewilderment. His face froze, and there was a rare panic between his brows. But he quickly suppressed his emotions, his sword eyebrows frowned slightly, and his voice was low. Don't move. The atmosphere in the office sank. After a long moment, Philip Crichton took a deep breath, and tried to communicate with me in a calm tone. Tell me, what do you see? I honestly replied, when I closed the notebook for you, I caught a glimpse of the page I just read. Didn't see anything else? Nope. I was absolutely clear. All of a sudden, Philip Crichton's back relaxed, but his ears slowly crept red. He stammered a little. Okay. Then you go out first. Just let me go. I stumbled home from work. Thinking that I was frightened during the day, I decided not to cook for myself, and ordered a random malatang. I took my phone and asked a question about the gathering of talents. What should I do if I peek at my boss' diary? What should I do if I accidentally hit my boss with something? Thinking back to the gaze Philip Crichton had looked at me before, my hand involuntarily typing on the keyboard. By the time I reacted, the question had already been raised. It reads, "How can I not be expelled?" Fingers stiffened. I wanted to delete the question, but after thinking about it, I felt that the question was necessary. Unexpectedly, after the question was sent, I received a strange private message soon after. "Hello, I have a good idea for all your questions." Intrigued, I received the next private message. "You can chase your boss." Am I disgusted that I didn't die completely enough? Ahem, ahem. The spicy tang in his hand was accidentally fed into his nose. Finally, it was cleaned up, and a lot of messages were sent from the dialog box. If you succeed, you don't have to worry about your life, and if you fail, you don't have to worry about your work. You might be expelled anyway, so it's better to give it a go. I was still a little hesitant. Isn't that okay? On the other side, he was determined. Soldiers do strange tricks, as long as they are useful. This method is ridiculous and reasonable, and it makes me jump back and forth between the bottom line and the principle. Finally, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind to gamble. Anyway, Philip Crichton doesn't like me, as long as he doesn't fire me. Maybe when the time comes, because of his embarrassment, I can even fish with the time to deliver the documents. I typed quickly, "Thank you, sister. Can I add you a contact information? It's easier for us to communicate." A Weshit number was sent on the other side. I looked through the circle of friends. I can feel that this sister is very manhood. I'm stuck in a dilemma. How can I confess both hastily and insincerely, and then let Philip Crichton reject me logically? I hadn't come up with a good answer yet, and the assistant came to me again. "Wallace Harrison, go and deliver a document to the president." As soon as I heard the word president, my hair stood on end, and I still remember the moment when I was caught peeking at the diary. Shaking his head violently to show his resistance. "No, no. Okay, halved wages." I shook my body, died down, and then bowed my head to flatter. "Special assistant, I'm kidding you. How could I not go? I love to send documents to the president." Then I walked away under the twitching gaze of the special assistant. Standing at the door of the president's office, I took a deep breath. Knock lightly. Enter. Philip Crichton focused on his papers, didn't look up, and gestured to an empty space for me to put them down. I put down my papers lightly, ready to quietly leave. At the same time, he raised the thermos cup in his hand, and took a sip of water. The water rolled down the Adam's apple and swallowed it, and the abrupt Adam's apple rolled up and down to attract people's attention. For a moment, I was stunned. Between the lightning and the fire, he let out a violent cough. Ahem, ahem, ahem. A sound seemed to cough out all the lobes of the lungs. I also panicked, stepped forward, and grabbed his arm and shouted, "President! What's wrong with you?" He struggled to point to the thermos. "Poisonous. Oh, my God. This mall is like a battlefield, and it is really no joke. There are even means of poisoning." I trembled and picked up the thermos cup, and quickly unfastened the silver chain from my ear. "It's all silver. You should be able to test for drugs, right?" Tentatively approaching, a sweet smell invaded my nostrils, and a vague sense of familiarity resonated with the depths of my soul. Milk tea. If you look closely, there are also many QQ bullets in it. Philip Crichton must have choked up, right? I looked up. He was still coughing, but his face was pallor. I remembered what I learned about first aid in college. "President, offended." I wrapped my arms around Philip Crichton's waist from behind, wrapped my arms around his waist and abdomen, and squeezed my hands hard inwards and upwards, again and again. Finally, the pearl in his throat was coughed out, and the whole person sat stupidly on the stool, panting for breath, frightened. Although embarrassed, it is more popular than usual, and a dull hair swaying in the wind. I suddenly remembered the confession mission that I had forgotten. One slipped to his knees in front of Philip Crichton, weeping bitterly. "Philip Crichton, don't let anything happen to you. How can I live if you die? Philip Crichton, I can't live without you." I howled so hard that my heart was broken, and my true feelings were revealed. His expression stiffened, and he rose from his stool without warning. He looked excited, muttered but couldn't make a sound, and was at a loss. His tears were about to come out, and his hand movements were as fast as the Hawkage's seal. It's time to pat yourself on the back. I picked up the thermos on the table and handed it over, and patted him on the back intimately. Philip Crichton took it and took a sip. Sensing what was in the thermos, his pupils dilated. I fainted suddenly. Philip Crichton was rushed to the hospital, and I was crying outside the emergency room. The passing nurse gave me a blank look before I quieted down, and wiped my tears silently. If nothing else, just for myself. This is about to come to the end of the year, the president is gone, and the year-end bonus must not be lost. I don't know how long I waited, but finally a nurse came out and took me to Philip Crichton's room. As soon as I entered the door, I saw a bed covered with a white cloth, and there were slight undulations underneath, and I could faintly see the silhouette of a person. Emotions are like a roller coaster ride that reaches its highest point all at once. No way. Could it be that Philip Crichton was really killed by a bead? All kinds of sad emotions welled up in my heart, and I couldn't help but kneel in front of the hospital bed covered with a white cloth, weeping and mourning. President, wake up. I don't believe it. How could you die like this? What should I do if you die? President, wake up. My year-end bonus hasn't been paid yet. Thinking of my distant year-end bonus, my painful emotion suddenly reached its peak. Tears were streaming down. The president really can't do it, so he gave out the year-end bonus first. At your funeral, I will hire a group of handsome young men in black suits, make them bow to your tombstone without saying a word, and walk away without saying a word, so that you have a mysterious and unknown past. As I was talking energetically, a hoarse male voice suddenly came from behind me. I'm not dead yet. I was stunned. Turning his head stiffly, lying comfortably on the plush sofa was a man's face, a face familiar to me. It was none other than my famous president, Philip Crichton. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes very contrivedly, and got up in embarrassment to change into an expression that I had for the rest of my life. President, you're not dead, are you? As soon as the words came out, I realized something and quickly changed my words. Oh no. I thought you were dead. Mouth. Who let you go it alone? Without waiting for Philip Crichton to ask, I quickly digressed from the subject. President, why did you faint suddenly? What did the doctor say? Isn't there going to be a big deal? When can I go back to work? The mouth runs in front, and the brain chases. Brain, can you run faster? Philip Crichton didn't say anything about my reaction, just clasped his hands around me and sneered. My heart sank to the bottom. This week, you won't want to deduct my year-end bonus, right? Ignoring the twitching corners of Philip Crichton's mouth, I proceeded. President, finally, in his unbearable look, the nurse bell was awakened, and I was pushed out to buy food by the nurse, who rushed to hear the news. After getting close to the nurse's sister over and over again, I finally learned why Philip Crichton was in the hospital. After all, it's because of me. The first aid method was not in place, and the remaining pearls were photographed by me in other corners, causing my year-end bonus to almost die. For a while, guilt welled up in my heart, and when I bought food for Philip Crichton, I even searched for meals suitable for patients on Du Nang. Push the door. The door is locked. I shouted at the top of my voice. President, open the door to me. No one responded. I knew this sullen wouldn't go back to me. It's okay. I have nirvana. Infatuated. Before he could finish reading this paragraph, Philip Crichton opened the door with a stinking face, and looked at the pile of things in my hand with a look of arrogance. The body language vividly expresses, take you, and get out of the way with your garbage. The two of us were standing in the doorway, deadlocked. In my pleading eyes, he finally let me in with kindness. I came out of the bathroom to wash my hands, and watched Philip Crichton grab my McSpicy chicken wings, and rock Coke ready to eat. The desire for good food suddenly took over my mind, and the strings of reason collapsed. Regardless of the reality that Philip Crichton is my president, I stepped forward quickly, and squeezed his mouth. President, this is my lunch. Yours over there. I pointed to the white porridge on the coffee table, and motioned to Philip Crichton not to defile my lunch. Who knows? I got a roll of his eyes. My face was full of indignation. I bought you lunch, and you rolled your eyes at me. Philip Crichton, you don't have a heart. In a moment of excitement, I even shouted out his name. His subordinates suddenly felt a hot and humid wriggling, soft and glutinous to the touch. One bows his head, only to find that Philip Crichton's mouth was still in my hand, and I pinched it like a duck. I stammered, "President, your mouth, give it back to you." His eyes were full of anger, his body trembled, his muscles straightened, and he could see that he was angry with me, and his voice was so loud that it seemed to swallow me. "Wallace Harrison, your year-end bonus is gone." "President, if I hadn't taken you to the hospital, how would you have known you had appendicitis? You will take revenge." I got up stunned, turned my head, and closed the door in one go. Another turn leads to Lucian Crane, another of Philip Crichton's assistants. Coffee shop. Jay Chow's confession balloon surrounds him. The surrounding scenery is elegant and stylish, and the flowing waterfalls that can be seen everywhere add a touch of color. The girl opposite was dressed in a straight professional attire, drinking coffee without saying a word, and making a little noise from time to time. She didn't speak, and I didn't squeak. It was quiet for a minute. She began to move in my direction, looking a little like pins and needles. I looked at her and still didn't speak. After another 5 minutes, she began to scratch her ears and rub her cheeks, and her elegant image was gone. Finally, she pretentiously took out her phone and swiped it a few times, her fingers brushing the broken hair around her ear. "Oops." The president urged me to hurry back. I blinked confusedly. "Oh, then you can buy the order and go to Philip Crichton." She swiped her phone a few more times and complained in annoyance. "I'm obviously a special assistant, but the president hands over chores to me every day, and I feel like I'm going to become a life assistant." Wallace Harrison, what would you do if something like this happened to you? Hearing Lucian Crane's words, I was filled with righteous indignation. Philip Crichton is a case of skinning, and passing dogs are skinned. The proletariat must stand up and unite. I said angrily, "I'll give him a big fight. You ask him to give you a raise, and if you don't raise your salary, you sue him and make him pay N+1. The face of the woman opposite was suddenly difficult to look at, and her expression seemed to be constipated. I attribute this expression to her fear of Philip Crichton's oppression by the Dark Ones. I patted my chest righteously. "Sister, don't be afraid. I will stand behind you and help you backstab the capitalist. When you resign, I'll secretly sell the company's toilet paper to support you." For a moment, I felt so great. The proletariat has risen. Lucian Crane threw the coffee spoon into the coffee cup, and the splash almost hit my face. Then he hurriedly got up and rushed out of the door. I looked at the coffee on my hands, and quickly got up. In the astonished eyes of everyone, I shouted, "Lucian Crane, you haven't paid for your coffee yet. If you're really in trouble, give me the money for your cup." She personally said that I had just come to invite me to coffee, and I was reluctant to let a cup of coffee be 100. In view of the fact that our proletarian union has just been formed, I have relented. I saw that Lucian Crane's face was even more ugly, almost with a falling motion. He put 100 yuan on the coffee table, shaking the coffee cup on the table slightly. No matter how bad the mood is, I can sense that Lucian Crane is angry. "Philip Crichton, what other harmful things have you done? I want to eliminate harm for the people and win back the year-end bonus." I'm stupid, really. I only knew that Philip Crichton was inhuman, and I didn't expect him to be so bottomless. Fuck, the stinky man really dares to deduct my year-end bonus. At this point, I was standing next to Philip Crichton's office, and said with a smile on my face, "President, I'm here to wish you a happy new year. Salute first, then soldier." Then, before I could say anything, Philip Crichton threw me a bag of papers. "Let me send it to the HR department." I spoke stiffly. "Send documents." "I don't send it." "How? Am I the first woman to reject you?" Philip Crichton sneered. "Guess." Then I read the documents in my hand. "And I look like you are performing casually. Good guys, don't take the bait like that. It seems that the only way to do this is to use my president's nirvana." I took out the lighter and mobile phone in my hand, and clicked the lighter, and the mobile phone kept playing That I Like You. "You don't have a lighter, but you can light my heart." The corners of his mouth twitched uncontrollably, and he looked nervously guarding the document in his hand, and his sharp gaze swept towards me. "It is an offense to deliberately damage company documents, and I advise you to think twice." Now it's my turn to twitch at the corners of my mouth. President, I'm playing with fire. Philip Crichton's words reminded me, and he and I combined for 800 hearts. He has 801, and I am still missing one. I can only rely on my most primitive method, force. Pick up the file Philip Crichton handed me, and place it on the lighter. President, do you want to see if there is a problem with the year-end bonus accounting? The finance department said that you signed it yourself. Fight. Philip Crichton, I want to get back everything that belongs to me, and get my year-end bonus back. I took out the salary slip in my hand, and the position of the year-end bonus was written with a duck egg. This year, the company has developed to the point where it can't do without me, and the company will have to break up sooner or later without me. Philip Crichton, the stinky man, was finally willing to look up at me, and then a standard commercial smile, looks damn an eyesore, stared at me for a long time, and finally was willing to speak. Tell me about your contributions. I took out 10 fingers and broke my fingers, and said one thing at a time. If I hadn't accidentally spilled the water on your table, you wouldn't have found out that the contract was a loophole for the company, and the last time you drank bubble tea, and stuck in your throat. If I hadn't been able to send you to the hospital, you wouldn't have found out that you had appendicitis, and last time, in order to shine at the banquet, you had to force me to buy you fake abs and fake ass. That's enough. Philip Crichton looked at me, with a frustrated look on his face, his eyes still flicking out, as if he was afraid that someone would hear this. The more he tried to press it down, the more I couldn't make him complacent. I was about to say something more, and Philip Crichton covered my mouth with one hand. The warm palm touched my mouth, and the unusual temperature spread through my lips all over my body. I winced slightly as if I had been electrocuted. President, let go. Damn. Before it was spoken, it was covered tighter. Philip Crichton slowly approached my ear, his deep voice coming to my ear. I'll let it go. You good? His eyes drifted towards me, as if asking. I blinked obediently. As soon as he let go, I started to cry again. Presidents, sure you, I'll call finance right now. The task of retrieving the year-end bonus has been completed. I happily popped out of the president's office, and wanted to share the good news with my teacher, thanks to her guidance. Otherwise how could my head have thought of playing with fire? Teacher, is my honorific name for the netizen, who helped me keep my job last time, to regain the year-end bonus. You are a little coquettish and gentle with your leader. Isn't that a matter of hand to hand? I didn't want to make a hand slip, and the voice call came. I was scrambling to hang up, when I heard a noise from Philip Crichton's office. I hurried in to check. I saw Philip Crichton fall out of his boss chair, and I couldn't help but look at his lit phone screen. I saw a Peppa Pig flash on his screen, and then the screen went black. Well, don't say it. No wonder he's the president. I'm a worker. There are few people with such a chic aesthetic. Looking away from my phone, I couldn't help but lower my eyes, and look at Philip Crichton on the ground. Looking at each other, his face looked a little flustered, and he didn't dare to look directly at me, and he looked like he had done something bad. Could it be that my year-end bonus hasn't been settled yet? That's not going to work. As an excellent professional worker, who wants a year-end bonus, how can I let my boss lie on the ground? I hurriedly grabbed his arm, trying to use my strength to lift him up. Who knows this old six? He dodged my palm and put his arm on my shoulder with his backhand. Due to the difference in height, I acted as a crutch as Philip Crichton got up. He managed to get up, but I fell straight down because of the unbalanced force. Philip Crichton's arm on my shoulder hadn't had time to retract it. The man did not stand still, and fell down again with my strength. When I came to my senses, I was lying in Philip Crichton's arms, scrambling to stand up. His panicked hand accidentally pressed against Philip Crichton's abs. Different from the touch of other parts, the muscles in the abdominal muscles are more stiff. I moved my fingers in a frustrated manner, and my fingertips circled the contours of Philip Crichton's muscles, instinctively wanting to relieve the embarrassment. The mouth took another step ahead. It whistled, then directed my eyes to scan Philip Crichton from top to bottom, and finally left a comment. It feels good. Philip Crichton's face was dark and gloomy, and he looked like he was going to send me to the waste of northern Myanmar in the next second. Miraculously, his body softened, and his earlobes were dyed pink. The breath of embarrassment went straight to death. I almost squeezed out a few emotionless words, from between my teeth to ease the atmosphere. President, are you all right? Philip Crichton put on a stinky face and replied coldly, it's fine. I stiffened and smiled. It's okay. I'm going to deliver the papers. Walking out of the office, I couldn't help but want to complain to the teacher about my resentful leader. My fingertips slid sparkling across my phone. Teacher, our leader is simply very smart. If it weren't for the high salary here, I wouldn't have bothered to take care of him. Teacher, you can help me figure out if I can give him a little bit of power. Teacher, have you ever touched a man's abs? That feels so quack. The message of the complaint was sent in a string. Maybe the teacher is still busy and hasn't replied to the message. On the way back from delivering the papers, a familiar stream of heat welled up in my stomach. I finally solved the physiological problem, but my ears suddenly caught my name. Wallace Harrison. Did you really come to our company through the back door? It looks pretty honest. There's no shelf. You don't know how high our company's requirements are. Isn't it the best evidence that she can come in as an ordinary university student? Yes, I didn't dare to speak while hiding in the toilet. I'm still very self-aware. Am I just the second who blends in with the wolves? When I turned on my phone again, the teacher who had disappeared for a long time was finally willing to reply to my message. The first thing that catches your eye is a cute emoji. Her words were provocative. It's very simple to teach him a lesson. What matters is whether you are willing to do it. Would I like to? Surely yes. No social animal can refuse this temptation. I replied with certainty yes. She was very satisfied with my answer, and even typed much faster than usual. You like this? And then, looking at the rows of typesetting typed by the teacher, I couldn't believe my eyes. To sum it up, just 3 words. Chase Philip Crichton. I hesitated. Teacher, are you really a serious person? The other side didn't reply to my message. I frowned, bouncing back and forth between the bottom line, morality, and principles. Before I could make up my mind, Philip Crichton called again. I took a deep breath before connecting. Wallace Harrison, did you go abroad to send a document? I can't see you in the office after 10 minutes. So you be absent from work for half a day. I took the phone away and shouted very contrivedly. What did you say, President? I don't have a good signal here. Hey. Then I simply hung up, and my anger gushed out, and I wanted to stand up on behalf of the proletariat. I'm going to have a well thought out plan to play Philip Crichton in the palm of my hand. As soon as I got emotional, I realized that I was still sitting on the toilet and looked at the time. Boy, I stayed in the toilet for almost 50 minutes. After tidying up, I returned to my place and began to write the strategy plan. As soon as I started, I was stumped. 25 years of being single. Chasing people is more difficult than high numbers. However, as human beings living in the information age, we need to learn to use technology. So, I clicked on the teacher's dialog box. Teacher, how do you get the first step in chasing people? At the top of the dialog box, notes and words are constantly being typed. Finally, he replied. Good to him. I put it succinctly. Okay, according to my experience of more than 10 years of literature in the field of domineering presidents, domineering CEOs are generally born into unlucky families, and sullen freaks like Philip Crichton must be super doubly unlucky. He definitely can't look down on ordinary little white flowers. So I have to find a new way. When you go out, you give your identity. From now on, I will be the little white overlord flower. On this day, I finally waited for a chance to give Philip Crichton warmth. Yesterday was the last 2 weeks of work in the previous year, and a lot of cooperation needed to end, and Philip Crichton slept directly in the company after a busy day. I got out of bed early in the morning, changed into my carefully selected white down jacket, and walked through the care process before heading out. Standing in front of Philip Crichton's bed, he didn't know what he had dreamed of, and he smiled gently. I made an anxious and irritated voice. Philip Crichton, wake me up. I command you to open your eyes and look at me at once. Do you hear? Philip Crichton was quickly moved by my genuine feelings and opened his eyes. He covered his eyes in horror and dragged the quilt to cover his naked upper body. The limited length of the quilt and Philip Crichton's vigorous movements revealed Philip Crichton's pajama pants. I was stunned for a moment. The process I just walked through didn't have this part. but I'm a qualified actor, and my on-the-spot performance is also a must. His eyes were fixed on the little yellow duck's pajama pants, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a wicked smile, with 3 points of uninhibited and 2 parts of thinness and 1 nonchalance. Man, this is your little trick. You're playing with fire. Philip Crichton was burned by my straightforward words, and quickly put down the quilt in his hand to cover the little yellow duck pajama pants, and naturally his fair and strong chest was unobstructed. I immediately squinted at the corner of my eyes. The new method is not bad, either. While Philip Crichton's mind was down, I hurried to finish the play. I looked restless and tugged at the collar of my down jacket and leaned down, propped my hands at his sides. The breath deliberately brushed his ear. The fire you lit yourself, you will extinguish it. After completing the process, I rolled over and jumped away from the top of Philip Crichton, escaped. But as soon as my hand touched the doorknob, my waist was covered with a strong arm. As soon as he pushed hard, I was back in bed. I was pressed tightly under Philip Crichton, the contours of male muscles penetrating through the heavy puffer jacket, and the slightest trace of it penetrated into the skin. Violent gasps swirled in my ears, enveloping me with his unique aura, and we were closer together. When he looked up, his gaze was fixed on my lips. The eyes are facing each other, and the breath is smelling each other. The atmosphere is here, and I can't help but close my eyes. He just changed his position, took me into his arms, and rubbed his chin against my hair. Wallace Harrison, go to sleep. I'm going to meet you in good spirits. I'm not honest in my dreams. In just 2 sentences, it burned my CPU dry. Admittedly, I was intrigued. Who can refuse a man who calls your name when he sleeps? I carefully removed Philip Crichton's arm from my waist and slipped on my shoes. Tapping the door shut, he turned around and met Lucian Crane again. The body is mechanized for a second. I'm either embarrassed or on my way to embarrassment, trying to find a way to deal with embarrassment. Nothing was found, so I could only squeeze a few words out of my mouth. Hello, Lucian Crane. She snorted coldly and did not respond to my greeting. Talking to herself was her special skill, and she unleashed it on me again. Oops. Today the president asked me to come to the office early, but I didn't expect to be bumped into by you. Ba Zongwen, the treasure book of misunderstanding, montage technique. However, her means are indeed a bit low. I watched quietly as she performed next. After talking for a while, she covered her mouth very contrivedly, and explained, Wallace Harrison, I don't have anything to do with Philip Crichton. Don't talk nonsense to your colleagues. Don't tell your colleagues. With 2 blush on his face, he vividly expressed his desire to cover it. I almost shouted with a loudspeaker, I am not innocent with the president. The corners of my mouth twitched. Lucian Crane micro me 500. I'll keep it a secret for you. Beat the magic with the current. The flush on her face faded in a second, and arrogance crept up in an instant, and the bitterness was vividly reflected. In the face of such powerful malice, I couldn't greet him with a smile, and raise my feet to return to my workstation. She hurried to catch up with me again, blocking the front. The expression on his face was arrogant. His eyes unconsciously glanced down, and his hands were folded. The tone was high, as if talking to me was a gift to me. I advise some people not to think about things that don't belong to them, otherwise the gains outweigh the losses. Don't blame me for not reminding you, Wallace Harrison. You're right. My face changed. When did Philip Crichton become her belongings? As he called my name in his dreams, Philip Crichton and I went both ways. It's not Lucian Crane's turn to show off here. I followed her posture and deliberately looked at her from top to bottom. Learn the hot stock of yin and yang on the internet. Shake your head and return the words to her. I advise some people not to think about things that don't belong to them, otherwise the gains outweigh the losses. Don't blame me for not reminding you, Lucian Crane. Right. Magic can defeat magic. Hearing this, Lucian Crane's face was so colorful that it almost blinded me. Ignoring the palette on her face, I walked back to my desk in a majestic manner. Ever since I defeated Lucian Crane's magic, the gossip about me going through the back door has grown. Toilets, pantry, restaurants. From time to time, the curious eyes of the crowd fell on me, and they almost asked me in the face. All the doubts turned into a sharp sword, and shattered my year-long efforts. At the end of the year, the conference room was densely packed. Everyone needs to report at the end of the year, including me, who is always fishing. However, when I opened the PPT, the words, "Go through the back door," and "related households," were put out. There was a sigh at the bottom. I closed the PPT with a blank face, took out my phone, and uploaded the PPT again. A male voice came from behind, Wallace Harrison. "Do you want to explain this? The company has been full of rumors lately." Another female voice answered, "Our company has always been known for its fairness and justice. You tarnish the company's reputation. How can you be embarrassed to stay in the company with a dead face?" These words are like drops of water, dripping into a pan of oil, causing ripples. There was a lot of chatter all around, and it flew towards me like a knife. My fingernails gripped my palms, and I raised my voice slightly. "Now, I'll report back to you. Don't care about the malicious eyes of the people below, and show your report fluently and smoothly. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the guidance." Finally, he calmly bowed to the audience. Everyone thought I was going to step down, but I opened another PPT. "Recently, everyone has been paying attention to my backdoor, and I will explain it to you. Attached is my written test, interview file and all the information on the job. As you can see, all the places in the archives are open and transparent. As for why I'm here as an ordinary student, I hope my year-end report can explain it to you. I believe that academic qualifications can't be the whole of ability. Hard work is." Finally, I would like to ask Lucien Crane, what should be done about slandering colleagues behind the backs of our fair and just company? Looking at Lucien Crane, who wanted to put himself in the background, I felt relieved. Philip Crichton was the first to applaud, and everyone around him applauded. Finally the sound grew louder and louder, resounding through the sky. I looked in Philip Crichton's direction and nodded, giving a grateful smile. Without his permission, I would not have been able to wash my grievances in front of everyone. It didn't last long for me to be moved, and the special assistant came. "Wallace Harrison, this is Martha, who has come to take your place. Remember to hand her over." I looked up at the special assistant in disbelief. I'm not already making it clear? Why fire me at all? Could it be that the last time I secretly charged a power bank in the company, I was discovered? Or was it the last time I fished and read a novel that was exposed? Without explanation, he put Martha in front of me and left. Look at Martha's confused, trusting eyes. I couldn't help it. I could only suppress my anger at Philip Crichton and pull out a tough smile. I grabbed a sticky note and said as I wrote, "Our position is mainly to assist in the work of special assistants, which is basically equivalent to directly connecting with the president. Universal bricks, where you need to move. Every morning, I have to bring the president a cup of freshly ground unsweetened coffee. Instant coffee is fine. He can't drink it. You have to meet any needs of the president, and if you don't have the ability, you have to learn to meet the ability. When he has a convulsion, you don't care." I handed Martha the note in my hand, and patted her on the shoulder with relief as she looked into her increasingly wise eyes. She is already a half-pulled mature worker. Immediately after that, I suddenly got up and kept sending messages to the teacher along the way to complain about the company. Wallace Harrison, came clean and walked away with the sewage. Dog company, not human. Standing at the door of Philip Crichton, the hand that was about to knock on the door flipped around and rushed in. I have no less resentment than a ghost now. "Philip Crichton, I've proven my innocence. Why do you want to fire me?" He paused with his phone and looked at me in amazement. Ignorant and ignorant. His acting skills are close to Hollywood stars. I keep outputting the following. "My mother looked for someone last time. My life is your company, and without me, your company will have to break up sooner or later. When you go bankrupt, I won't come back." I spoke dryly, but Philip Crichton's expression was still unfazed. The look that seems to be smiling but not smiling, with a yell line that is clearer than my life plan. Hiss, I'll admit, I'm shamefully moved. I gritted my teeth. "Okay, if you expel you, you will be expelled. But, may I give it a kiss?" I approached Philip Crichton's comfy executive chair and pushed him down, confined him to the couch in my arms. With great determination, I leaned down. Philip Crichton was so shocked that the phone loosened in his palm and fell at my feet. My lips that were about to fall froze. For no other reason. The dialogue box on his phone is very familiar to me. I turned my head to look at Philip Crichton, and almost gritted my teeth to say the words. Teacher. Philip Crichton. I'll just say that this teacher's moves are weird, and it's all bad ideas. At this moment, the anger was stronger than the resentment, and it rushed straight to the heavenly spirit guy. Really wanted to go knife Philip Crichton. Philip Crichton, would you like to explain? This would make Philip Crichton's face no longer maintain, and he almost craned his neck to explain. I almost laughed. Soldiers do strange tricks. You really can do it. At this time, he could only cover his face with his hands and defend Polly. I don't know anything. What are you talking about? Looking at him like this, I remembered what he had encouraged me to do before. Strong kisses. I pulled his palm away and kissed him fiercely and sharply on the lips. I'm going to quit anyway. If you don't kiss enough, won't you lose? It wasn't until I was breathless that I slowly leaned closer to Philip Crichton's ear, deliberately lowered voice to move whispers. Like that. You're sullen. I whistled inwardly as I watched Philip Crichton have pink all over his neck. Quotations from the boss. Woohoo. Leaving Philip Crichton's office with a satisfied expression. No wonder there is a saying that peony flowers die, and ghosts are also romantic, and I quite agree with it now. I bumped into the anxious-looking assistant head-on, and he grabbed my arm. Wallace Harrison, where have you been? Didn't you report to Lucian Crane's workstation after the handover? What are you doing hanging around here? I was stunned. He pointed to his nose in disbelief. What am I doing at Lucian Crane's workstation? The special assistant looked at me, with an idiotic look on his face. Lucian Crane has been fired for spreading rumors, and you'll take her place temporarily. Me? Are you sure it's Wallace Harrison, who is promoted? Sure. Hiss. I'm going crazy. I couldn't help but gasp. Think back to the scene when I pressed Philip Crichton on the stool and kissed him incessantly, and the last moment, when I talked to the overbearing president, grabbed his face and pinched it hard. Pain. I must have been having painful dreams. I couldn't stand it, and the special assistant interrupted me. All right, you hurry up and pack your things, and remember to report to the personnel department later. After a week of trembling work, miraculously Philip Crichton didn't bother me, although my mom often complains. The brain stem seems to be drained, but as an adult, I know exactly what Philip Crichton means by teasing me over and over again. I can't say that I don't have a crush on Philip Crichton, but I don't have a lot of feelings for a professional worker. I can drink 2 cups of milk tea, plus half price for the second one, and he has to put a thermos cup when he drinks bubble tea. The door is not the right one. Square peg. Well, I just can't swallow the evil smell of being deceived. Luckily, the company was so big that I deliberately avoided it, and I didn't see Philip Crichton very often. The occasional meeting, in front of Philip Crichton, I naturally lowered my head. I couldn't see his eyes. I couldn't see the strange light shining in his eyes. I couldn't see what was in his eyes. I couldn't see the burning under his eyes, the high temperature that could be burned at a glance. Chinese New Year's Eve. The New Year's Eve fireworks did not wait, and a strange phone call arrived first. Numbers that have not been seen before. Numbers in different places. Hang up. Hit it again. Irritably, he picked up the phone and said in a bad tone, "Hey." The resentment of the exit is greater than that of the ghosts. The other side obviously didn't expect my tone to be bad, and no one spoke up for a while. I could only hear the wind whistling through the microphone, and there was a sound even on my side. After a long period of no one spoke, I became even more impatient. Talk. Tease me. The other side just started joking with me. Why is it a joke? Because they said that Philip Crichton was in their hands, and needed a ransom of 200,000. Philip Crichton, the boss of the capital, is worth hundreds of billions? Philip Crichton was kidnapped just to extort $200,000. And you stripped more than that. Fraudsters have to rush for performance on Chinese New Year's Eve. Then don't blame me for being ruthless. I took the phone and looked for the sound of the car accident scene on the internet. The expression on his face was full of fun, but his voice was frightened. Big brothers, I'll send you 200,000 right away. Please don't hurt our president. I'll drive the ransom right now, and I'll give you an address. The fraudsters were so happy when they heard my response that I even heard the sound of beer cans colliding. Is this already on the celebration? After a long time of noisy noise, a thick male voice interrupted their joy. Okay, you send it to the tipping. Before his address could be finished, the audio of the car crash was forcibly inserted. Vehicle collisions, fuel tank explosions, and even details down to the shouts of pedestrians. Just listening to the sound, you can hear that the scene is chaotic, and there are many casualties. This operation silenced the fraudsters on the other side, and I even heard screams of horror, one after another. I covered my mouth and thought about all the sad things in my life. I didn't laugh out loud on the spot. I don't know if the big brothers will think, when they go to bed tonight, I'm really damned. Ha ha ha. Before I had time to rejoice, I heard a familiar voice. The voice in my heart let out a low, angry tone, and the tone was anxious like I had never heard before. What happened? The voices of the big men were also fragmented, and they couldn't say why. Philip Crichton's voice was even more agitated. His voice was irrepressibly hoarse, and the sound of violent struggle came through the microphone. What happened to her? Tell me quickly. Don't you have a mouth? Isn't it just 200,000? Let me go, and I'll give you 1,000,000 each. The sound of the phone was accompanied by the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground, and the body was numb to hear it. Oh, my God, Philip Crichton is really in their hands. He pulls out his computer and tries to track down the location of the kidnappers' phone card while sending a message to the special assistant to rescue Philip Crichton. I quickly changed to another mobile phone number and called, and the call was quickly connected. Hey, who are you? I deliberately raised the tone of my voice, and the clipping sound became a lowly clip sound. Brothers, the other special assistant had an accident, and I will send the ransom money immediately. The agitation of voices continued to be heard from the other side, and Philip Crichton kept shouting to know the truth of the matter. If you listen closely, you can hear the sound of fists colliding, and the muffled grunt of being beaten. I was anxious, but my tone didn't dare to show it at all. Brothers, we'll send you 200,000 for a small amount, provided that Philip Crichton is safe. You can confirm that it's safe, but the price will be doubled. All of a sudden, the other side suddenly had a brain, an arrogant attitude, and acted professionally. With a sudden change, it's hard not to suspect that there is a behind-the-scenes driving force behind it. I readily agreed. Brother, money is trivial. Can you give Philip Crichton the phone first? Maybe it's because my voice is too lowly, which lowers the kidnapper's vigilance. Soon after a small crack, I realized that the hands-free was turned on. Philip Crichton's voice came. The voice was weak and small, but it was firm. Leave me alone. Let's find out what's going on with Wallace Harrison. She's driving, like she's in an accident. I opened my mouth to explain. Philip Crichton's restless mood returned, and the whole person seemed to crawl out of hell. Let's go. Just go. What if something happens to her? His emotions were even more agitated, and his voice was a little choked up at the end. I'm begging you. Tell someone to find Wallace Harrison. It's so cold today. She's going to be cold outside alone. Philip Crichton was in a very nervous state, and couldn't listen to anything for a while. The kidnappers soon realized the incident and took back the phone in Philip Crichton's ear, threatened me with a vicious face. Okay, you're sure of people's safety. Hurry up and send 400,000 over. In front of me was a message from the special assistant. The rescuers still need a little time, and the kidnapper's phone cannot be disconnected yet. I turned my mind and kept talking. Brother, for the sake of my super hating of our president, I want to mention you a few words. After all, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. It's coming to the end of the year soon. Is 400,000 of your brothers enough? A president worth 100 billion, is only 400,000? Isn't this an insult to you? If you want me to say, 1,000,000 per person is in Horse Dovers. I treat you as a brother to talk to you about the heart-to-heart of the heart. If it were other people, I wouldn't care at all. Right. The eldest brother on the other side was obviously moved by me, and almost burst into tears. In the face of a huge ransom, I am still a little hesitant. Big sister, you're so good, but isn't this 5 million a bit too much? I sent the information I had gathered to the special assistant, and I continued to work around. The man you kidnapped is a proper capitalist. and we are setting an example for the proletariat to stand up. Besides, if our brother still has to hand over some of it to his superiors in the end, it's not easy to have a good time for the new year today. Speaking of this big brother, he smiled, and he didn't notice that the old bottom was transparent. No, the superiors still have to give us money. Speaking of which, it's the first time I've seen a proud woman with eyes on her head. In this way, I know who is behind it. The message from the special assistant was just as it came, and I casually found an excuse to hang up. I don't have to worry about the rest. 11:59. I waited with great anticipation for the New Year's Eve fireworks to bloom. Another call came in. One look at the note, Philip Crichton. Resigned to his fate, he took the phone and spoke in an unkind tone. Hey, I'm downstairs at your house. I poked my head out of the window. Philip Crichton was half hidden in the shadows, and he was faintly visible under the dim street lamp, wearing a black down jacket, and his back to me was very lazy, as if he had no bones, leaning against the street lamp, bright and dark, and he looked like a street runner on the side of the road. Then he turned his head, squinted lazily, met my inquiring gaze, and smiled at me. The smile tugged at the corner of the mouth, and the wound ruined the overall beauty, and there was even a bruise on the face. But he didn't have any scruples, and looked at me with burning eyes. 12 o'clock sharp. The New Year's Eve fireworks burst out on time, lighting up the entire sky. Even with the light on Philip Crichton's face, I could clearly see the words coming out of his mouth, and the voice coming from his phone. Happy New Year, Wallace Harrison. The cheerful mood was contagious, and I couldn't help but make a trumpet shape with my hands, and respond in the direction of Philip Crichton. Happy New Year. He then beckoned to me, and motioned for me to go downstairs. I looked at my hair, which I hadn't washed in 3 days, and my pajamas, and shook my head. His expression changed, and he looked at me with a sad look. Just when I thought he was going to threaten me, he forced to suppress his look, and coquettishly scorned his mobile phone. Wallace Harrison, come down quickly, please. Because of my good eyesight, I could clearly see Philip Crichton gritting his teeth. I closed my eyes in despair. I've done a lot of evil in my previous life, and I've seen Philip Crichton coquettish in this life. Philip Crichton on the other end of the line was still attacking. Sister, I couldn't help but interrupt. I know you're in a hurry, but don't be in a hurry. I trotted all the way up to Philip Crichton. Caught off guard, he pulled out a bouquet of roses from behind him. A rough estimate is that there are 19 red roses, with water droplets on them, delicate, and dotted with stars all around. Wallace Harrison, I like you. Can you be my girlfriend? The atmosphere was quiet, and I felt his gaze wandering across my face, and I looked up at him, and met a pair of deep eyes, looking at him carefully. It turned out that Mr. Ball would blush and his hands tremble when he confessed to the girl he liked. I didn't say anything. Philip Crichton's expression was a little silent, but his gaze was still gentle. Aren't you ready? Then today I just came to accompany you on New Year's Eve, and I also bought the strawberry tart you want to eat. He handed me the carefully preserved strawberry tart behind him, and his eyes became even more silent. Originally, I hadn't figured out how to deal with this matter, but my mouth acted before me. I don't believe it, unless I look at my abs. I was joking, but Philip Crichton was serious. He unzipped his down jacket to reveal his white shirt. He lowered his head and pretended to be cautious, and raised his eyes to look at me, his thick eyelashes fluttering, and his eyes seemed to have some tears. What's even more excessive, is that he scooped up his shirt, and opened his mouth to bite it with his teeth, and asked me in a vague tone, "Show." Hiss. I gasped and quickly put Philip Crichton's shirt down, and looked around like a thief, helped him zip it up, and when he withdrew his hand, he found that he was covered with water stains, and he patted him on the shoulder. I believe. His face froze suddenly, like a machine that hadn't run for 10 years, and his expression was indescribably stunned. I covered his cold hands and looked into his bright eyes. Are you stupid? Did you say yes? Have you agreed to be my girlfriend? A smile burst out of his face, all of a sudden, and he looked as if he had signed a contract worth hundreds of millions. He affectionately called out my name, and then imprinted a kiss on my lips. Wallace Harrison. I'm happy now. His ears were frozen like a crystal clear strawberry in the snow, and he was salivating. I put my arms around his neck, and gently leaned into his ear. I want to taste strawberries in winter, until I was out of breath and lazily stayed in his arms, playing with his big bony hands. Then I remembered what I had written in my diary. When have I ever complimented you on being a boy with a taste? Philip Crichton's expression stiffened at the mention of this, and he was so embarrassed that he wanted to change the subject. But he fell into my curious eyes, sighed in resignation, and replied, 8-year-old, after you take me to blow up the manure pit. This story has ended. Everyone is welcome to subscribe to the channel to get the latest content at any time, and a large number of novels are updated daily.